Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here, behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Good to be with you. By the way, today, I can't tell you how much fun I had watching Bobby Kennedy. My gosh, RFK Jr. laying bare the insanity that is Capitol Hill. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam, I had to think about that. At What's Right Sam on X. Thank you very much. Yes, that is my social media handle. Find me there. Look, well, it was masterful. Robert Kennedy, he's there. Look, he is sitting there in the hot seat getting grilled by all of these ridiculous Democrat senators. And he is, basically operating on, I think, his voice. Yeah, he's got an impediment. I mean, obviously has difficulty talking. So with, half a vocal cord, able to decimate every single one of these whack Democrats as they were attacking him. Now, before we get into the weeds of this, let me tell you, it's important because my entire life I've been told repeatedly, if only we had a government that stood up to the special interests. And we've been told this principally by left-wing media, right? If only America stood up to special interests. If only we had a government that looked out for the little guy. My entire adult life, the Democratic Party has been running on this very principle and has been making this very promise to its voters. Hey, if you elect us, say the Democrats for the past 40 years, if you elect us, we will look out for you, not for the big corporations, not for big pharma, not for big oil. We're going to look out for, little Sally and Don and whoever else is in the country, ordinary Americans trying to make it. Today, on display, front and center, were a bunch of odious Democrats who have probably made such promises as I've described just now, and empty platitudes talking about being for ordinary Americans, but in reality, they are bought and paid for by the special interests. And it's those special interests that these senators went to fight for today when they went to work. They weren't representing their constituents back home in their respective states. They were representing Pfizer and Moderna. And it's funny that we as Republicans now, we've switched places and recognize that these large corporations are fallible, that these large corporations actually have done a lot of harm in our society, meaning they have used their wealth and their success to sabotage conservatives, freedom of choice, real freedom of choice. I'm not talking about abortion. I'm talking about being able to, as a parent, decide whether or not your kid is going to be hit with 30 vaccines in a space of weeks. Story after story after story in the mainstream media the last several days, if you haven't noticed, has been about RFK Jr. being a hellraiser, but not in a good way. The New York Times, a few days ago, writing a piece about the CDC. Will it survive RFK Jr.'s assault on the institutions? They describe RFK Jr. as dealing lasting damage to the agency. They cite experts who claim there will be harsh consequences for the public for all of this. Apurva Mandavili, writing for the New York Times, Says this week, as Mr. Kennedy ousted the agency's new director and precipitated the resignation of 4 other leaders, experts in public health began asking questions unthinkable just a few months ago. Is the CDC dying? And if so, what does that mean for Americans? Not even 2 paragraphs later, she begins to cite Dr. Dimitri Deskalakis. Now, this is the guy who, of course, is into BDSM. He's gay. He's made numerous interviews, some crazy stuff. By the way, I think we have one teed up. I've had it for a few days. I've been to play it. I mean, this guy's just an absolute nut job who, for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, of course. He's politically connected. He's a Democrat. He's a left-winger. Of course, he's going to have a prominent role in a leading Washington establishment. And it literally, this is what it says. It's got like a heart rhythm that's not viable at the moment. That's what Dr. Dimitri Deskalakis said. Describes him as someone who once led the CDC's Center for Respiratory Diseases until his resignation last week. Dr. Deskalakis says that if it's, meaning the CDC, not shocked out of it now, it may not survive. They are freaking out. And why are they freaking out? Because these agencies, like the CDC, have long been the devil's playground for the Democratic Party. They've used these agencies as the means by which they have furthered their radical agenda. The entire heist that was the 2020 election originated at the CDC. It was the CDC that gave Trump all that terrible advice on the shutdown and then kept the country shut down, allowed for an environment where liberties and organizational ability of right in the middle of an election, right, of conservatives to gather, all taken away. How many times do I have to say it? It was fine to go into Costco. It was not okay to go to church. It's weird stuff. And these are the experts that are now being cited to tell us that Kennedy is failing us. Dr. Ashisha Jha, yes, I'm not making these names up, they're real, says that Mr. Kennedy has not been reforming the CDC. He has been breaking it in a way that loses pretty much all the good people within it. This again, according to Dr. Jha. Andrew Nixon, a spokesman for the Department of Health and Human Services, pointed to Mr. Kennedy's message to CDC employees on Thursday night. Quote, and this is Kennedy, the CDC must once again be the world's leader in communicable disease prevention. Together, we will rebuild this institution into what it was always meant to be, a guardian of America's health and security. Now, where I'm coming from on all of this is if we're going to have a government agency that is tasked with keeping us healthy, this government agency ought to be, in my view, an independent, agency that is not getting funded by pharmaceutical companies, by hospitals, by any outside influence. And this is an agency who ought to tell us what is best. And if it can't do that, it shouldn't exist. Remember this, the left has always sought to take any organization, any agency, any structure that is existing, and they co-opt it, they take it over, and then they use it to advance their agenda. So what we saw on the Hill today, and this, by the way, it's all part of a concerted effort to dispose of RFK Jr. I don't think it's working. I think the Democrats all looked absolutely insane. And I'll give you some of the highlights here when we come back from the break. I think they all look out of their depth and nuts, frankly. But more importantly, Americans need to realize, I think it's coming across, that RFK Jr. is trying to bring back some amount of responsibility to Washington for looking out for the ordinary, lowly American, for looking out for you and me and our kids and our health. The question everyone ought to be asking is, why is it that we have for years been funding these agencies, including the CDC, and yet what's going on? We're getting less healthy year after year, decade after decade. It's a problem. And some of these questions about vaccines, for example, need to be asked. People have been talking about this for years. So all of this is a return to power for the people. That's what this consists of. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, The What's Right. She'll be back in a moment.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Well, looky here. Another big win for Florida. Today, we just found out Alligator Alcatraz has been upheld by the court, so it remains open in spite of the activist judges trying to shut it down. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The other win for Florida that I neglected to mention yesterday was that the state of Florida is ending all vaccine mandates, period, full stop. All vaccine mandates are suspended. Now, this comes on the heels of, and I saw this in a Deseret News piece here. This is one of the many articles right now coming out about the pressure mounting against RFK Jr., particularly his HHS vaccine policies. And in the piece, it says that Oregon, California, and Washington are getting together to craft their own vaccine guidelines. Okay, so we're back to federalism? Is that what I'm hearing here? We're back to California saying we're going to do one thing and Florida is going to do something else. The voters in Florida get to decide if that's the world that they want to live in, and the same in California. And all of those crazy Hollywood liberals who are and have been for years outspoken critics of all the vaccines have to decide whether they embrace the insane liberalism that they so cherish, remain in their blue state of California, and risk their kids all getting autism from the chemicals pumped into them, or hey, you're going to move down to Boca. But at least be in the land of the free. See, this is going to cause people to think. At any rate, the system, the American system, the federalist system, is working exactly as intended. This isn't a bad thing. Now, what the left wants is the left wants to impose its will on the entirety of the country. That's why these agencies are the battlefront now of MAGA. Because Trump discovered in his first term that it didn't matter who he installed in his cabinet. It didn't matter that he won the election. It didn't matter that we had a Republican executive branch. Every one of these agencies was staffed with people like these losers that are complaining now that they've been thrown out. Staffed by people who were, committed ideologues. And they were supported by powerful Democrats and weak Republicans. Now, on the Hill today, as Bobby Kennedy Jr. was in the hot seat getting grilled by the Democrats, I saw something that was refreshing. I saw a member of a Republican administration fighting back and calling these people basically retards to their faces. It was great. This is how it ought to be. You can't dance around this. These people do not deserve respect. For example, at one point, in a little tete-a-tete with Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, RFK Jr. basically says, "You're not answering my question." Bennett gets flummoxed because, of course, he's supposed to be the one asking the questions. But, hey.
What I said was accurate. What you said were lies. You described
Senator,
moving the Titanic.
Senator, are you saying that the mRNA vaccine has never been associated with myocarditis or pericarditis in teenagers?
I am simply.
Is that what you're trying to tell us?
I am simply trying to say that the people that you have put on that panel, after firing the entire.
You're evading the question.
No, I'm asking the questions here,
You're
Mr.
evading
Kennedy.
that question.
I'm asking the questions, Mr. Kennedy. I'm asking the questions for Mr. Kennedy on behalf of parents and schools and teachers all over the United States of America who deserve so much better than your leadership. That's what this conversation is about, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, they deserve the truth, and that's what we're going to give them for the first time in the history of that agency.
I don't know. Who has the winning argument there? You've got the Democrat senator who is berating RFK Jr., getting heated because he's being called out. He wants the status quo. And RFK Jr. goes, "No, listen, we're going to get at the truth. We want the truth." And I don't, frankly, by implication, right, the people that existed in the agency, the holdovers, the ideologues working in the bowels of the CDC, not talking about Daskalakis. I'm not talking about his bowels. I'm just saying in the depths of the agency. These are people that would have resisted the change that you and I voted for. That's the beauty of Trump 2.0. I'm just getting it. This is what is so incredible about it. Ron Wyden, Democrat Oregon, basically got a little stern talking to by RFK Jr. Was also not that pretty for the Democrats to hear this.
Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end.
Yeah. I mean, Senator, you've been here for a quarter of a century. You've sat in that chair. And all of these mortality rates, all these numbers keep getting worse. So who are you to tell me that I'm the cause of this, that if the wheels are going to fall off the bus? Hell, you've had it your way for a long time. Why don't we try something different? In fact, it's the old adage, you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity. And that is what the Democrats are doing, even though I think it's far more sinister than that. I think this is all very deliberate. Now, I know. Well, of course he had Pocahontas up there. Pocahontas, and she is, folks, some of you, not me, some of you have been through a divorce. Some of you have an ex-wife. Gentlemen, I'm talking to you, presumably. This is what I imagine. I imagine, I have a lovely wife, so I'm not planning on any divorces, but imagine if I had an ex. She would in some way, shape, or form sound like Elizabeth Warren. This is the most grating, nasty voice. And then you had, of course, the senator from New Mexico offering RFK Jr. a starfish pin. You'd think this is like kindergarten. Just wait, I got so much to get to. Stay tuned. All right, friends. Sam Mirejovsky here. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At what'srightsam on Twitter. now known as X. Be back in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. You know, folks, I gotta come back always to COVID, because if we're talking about the CDC, and we got the Democrats arguing for why RFK Jr., how RFK Jr. is destroying the CDC, shouldn't we talk about all of the things that the CDC blew during COVID? Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Good to be back. They got the origin of the disease wrong. They got the transmission wrong, lockdowns, fatality rate, business closures, school closures. Plexiglass barriers didn't do anything. Masks were wrong. Variant impact wrong. Vaccine efficacy wrong. Remember, take the vax. You'll never get it or spread it. Then it was, well, you take the vax and you won't spread it. Then it was, oh, wait, you're going to take the vax. You may still get it. You may still spread it, but it's not going to be as strong of an impact on your body. Right? They got it all wrong, is my point. All of it. So what are we doing here? You have, and this is, again, I always come back to the brilliance of Donald Trump getting the left to argue for broken systems. It doesn't matter if it's crime prevention or the open border or now the CDC. The Democrats, by virtue of opposing Trump, afflicted with a disease that CDC has not been able to fix, called Trump derangement syndrome. You know, I mean, they ought to look into that if they're concerned about the mental health of the country, but I digress. Anyway, they are just reflexively, again, if Trump is going via RFK Jr. to clean up the CDC and disassociate the CDC from Big Pharma, then guess what? We're going to do the opposite. And we're going to double down, meaning we, the Democrats, we're going to double down on everything wrong that ever happened. And this is the smarmy, talk-downy type attitude that we got all day today on the Hill. And RFK Jr. was, for all intents and purposes, you and me in that chair. These people weren't talking down to him. They were talking down to us. That's right. He was representing us. Now, I don't agree with him on everything, and sometimes I catch him, honestly. And I'm able to do this because I'm always going to tell you folks the truth, okay? RFK Jr. sometimes plays around with things a little bit, and statistics are easy to bend. But at my core, I believe that the old system was broken. I believe that the old CDC was infested with crazy libs. And I also believe, and I'll tell you, when we had our kids, thank my lucky stars that my wife had common sense. My wife was pushing back. Every one of our kids, they ultimately got the bare minimum of vaccines required in the state of California to go to school, because that's where we were when our kids were young. But she waited. She read a lot. She was concerned, and she waited as long as possible, to the point I remember the kid's doctor, the pediatrician, said, if you don't get this, it's like tail end, I can't have you in my practice. So good on Sherry for being, being the tip of the spear on this. And so my thinking is on all of this is, there's something alarming with these autism rates, right? There's something alarming, and maybe we ought to look into it. But doing the same thing over and over again, going, but it's the science. I don't trust the science anymore. I'm sorry. I have found that the scientists, the experts, lie. And it's not even about COVID. Can I tell you about something called global warming? Can I tell you about the time I was in middle school? Rancho Middle School in Irvine, California on Michelson. Robbie, you didn't go to Rancho, I think. You went to a different middle school. But anyway, I went to Rancho. It basically looked like a penitentiary. Anyway, I had a science teacher. I think her name, actually, remember this, Mrs. Baird. Mrs. Baird's probably dead right now, but not because of climate change. Mrs. Baird, the whole thing was about the ozone, about the rainforests. And we were told that by the time we were going to be adults, at least then, maybe into our 20s, within a few years, there would be a hole in the ozone so big that our whole body. Remember this? This is what I was taught. Me and a whole bunch of, wide-eyed 7th graders were being taught this nonsense because so-called experts put it in the textbook and told Mrs. Baird to teach it. I don't know if she actually believed it or not, but she was there teaching it. And I'm certain half the class or more have become, complete libs because they went home and talked about this and their parents weren't like my parents who told me, Sam, that's a load of beep. And Miss Baird's a moron. You can tell her we said so. That's the home I grew up in. And Robbie, you know my parents. So am I misrepresenting anything here? I don't think so. Well, they listen, so this will be a trip down memory lane for them. But my point is the experts get it all wrong. We can't be in this world where we just blindly follow the experts. And that's part of the problem. And you realize that a lot of this stuff is being influenced by money and politics. So it's not so much about the science, it's about the Benjamins. And it was this particular moment I love because RFK Jr. got the smarm, got the little Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, started to have a little back and forth with her. She was getting heated. And she claims that he's taking vaccines away from people, which he's not doing. You have the freedom to take it. You're just not compelled to take it. That's the difference. And of course, RFK Jr. quickly brings this back to the money that Elizabeth Warren, a.k.a. Pocahontas, is getting from the pharmaceutical industry.
You promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away if you can't get it from your pharmacist.
Well, most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is everyone who wants it. That was your promise.
No, I didn't. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying when you said that? Because you are the one who said you would not take them away. Now, Senator Kennedy,
I'm not taking them away from anybody.
Secretary,
you want me to indicate a product for which there is no clinical data?
Senator,
is that what you want?
Secretary Kennedy, you said you wouldn't, and now you did.
I'm not taking them away. Everybody can get access to them.
No, they can't walk into a pharmacy the way they could last month and get access.
It depends on the state. It depends on the states.
A year ago,
but they can still get it. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it, Senator.
So look, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. Okay, I've lost that. Every man in America who is divorced is listening to Pocahontas here rant and rave. Not listen, just broadcast. And it is having PTSD flashbacks. That's mean. I apologize. By the way, $875,000 for pharmaceutical companies, they've all taken, including the Republicans. I'm actually with Bernie Sanders on that. That's the point. RFK Jr. is sitting there talking to an entire panel of people who are on the take. And when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, this $875,000 is a lot of wampum. So what does that buy her donors? It buys her donors this. So we're back to performance art. I just, to put it into focus, these Democrats are paid to dance. Dance, monkey, dance is literally what they are told by their donors. And the dance that the pharmaceutical companies want right now is for them to go out and performatively demonstrate, berate and demonstrate against the Trump administration's efforts to begin rolling some of this stuff back. It has nothing to do with policy. It has nothing to do with sincerely held beliefs. It's purely politics and money. And back to where I started the show at the top of the hour. Listen, I grew up my entire life being told about politics that we need to get money out of politics. We need to get, we need to restore the power back to the people. We need to get special interests out of politics. And the people I predominantly heard this from, rather patronizingly, was from Democrats. My goodness, how the roles have reversed. Now, the real idiot winner was Ben Lujan, Democrat, New Mexico. Lujan is a low IQ individual, no question about it. He comes to RFK Jr. with the question. His question is, are you committing? Do you commit here and now, Secretary Kennedy, to sharing the protocols used for the autism study with Congress and the public? Do you commit to this? And the response, of course, was perhaps unexpected.
They're public.
Will you commit to giving it to this committee by the end of the week?
No, not because that's not the way it works.
Will you
don't even know what you're talking about.
Mr. Secretary, will you commit to sharing the protocols for the study by the end of the month?
We already have
You
put
just said
out,
it's public.
we put out the notice of funding opportunities, and then the scientists from all over the world.
You're not understanding me. Let me
No,
speak
you're
clearly
not
again.
understanding how the world works.
Do you understand what the protocols are? Do you understand what they are?
The scientists who are doing the studies submit the protocol.
Okay, so you know
That's
what
not
they
coming
are.
from us.
So will you commit to sharing those protocols with this committee?
Well, anybody can get a hold of the protocol. It's published with the study.
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to ask is for your commitment here.
This guy. People always ask me, Sam, you should run for public office. We need a quality congressman or a quality senator in Nevada, because all but one are complete idiots. And I go, I would love to. Sounds fun. But I have other things to do that make me more money and bring me more satisfaction. And that's really the story of what you're seeing here too. The people that go, yeah, I'm going to commute to Washington, D.C. for a salary of $180,000 a year and live apart from my family and take time off from any other productive work. That's a very special kind of person. I think, honestly, a job in politics is something someone should do when they retire. I think you start a business, you do something great, you sell your business or whatever it is, you retire young, maybe in your mid-50s, early 60s, and you go and you do a few stints in Congress. That's what it ought to be. But these people that are in there, these careerists, this Lujan guy wouldn't make it as a I don't know. I mean, he wouldn't make it a week in my office. It's really something else. But wait, it gets worse. Trust me. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Stay tuned for the rest. Today's debacle on Capitol Hill, the questioning by senators of Robert Kennedy Jr., just makes me think that some of these senators commute to the Capitol by short bus. There's no other explanation for it. Okay, Senator Ben Ray Lujan, Democrat, New Mexico. The Senate's one of many affirmative action hires there. This guy, unprepared as heck, asking a question about David Geyer. Now, David Geyer is a controversial figure hired by Kennedy as a data analyst. Now, he is a vaccine skeptic. I'm okay with having vaccine skeptics in our government. Let's shake this whole thing loose. Let's find things out. Let's ask questions. But of course, his bona fides are not good enough for the smart people on the committee here. And so Senator Lujan steps in it, talking about this guy, and thinks he's going to get RFK Jr. on a gotcha. It didn't work out that way.
Is Mr. Geyer a doctor?
No,
Did you know he never went to medical school?
he's not. He's not practicing medicine.
Did you know that he got caught in Maryland and was charged for practicing medicine without a medical license?
He was charged by a medical board. He sued the medical board, and the medical board was found to have acted in actual malice and was fined $2.6 million by a judge in Maryland for doing that.
See, so you choose to know a lot when you want to know a lot. It's incredible, Mr. Kennedy.
Senator, you're
it's incredible.
ridiculous.
So here's the question.
Kennedy's not having any of it. Well, I can't believe this. I cannot believe what upside down world am I living in, where I am cheering on a Kennedy. This was not on my 5 years ago, 10 years ago. This was not on my 2025 bingo card. Well, it got even weirder. After losing every battle with RFK Jr., Senator Lujan was left with just this. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you my starfish pin today, Mr. Secretary.
Look, 2 young ladies in Las Cruces, New Mexico, at a town hall recently gave me this starfish pin. I was going to give it to you today, but after your questioning today, I don't think you deserve it, because what this represents is to remember that every one of us can make a difference, sir, to something as small as a starfish on a beach that maybe got washed up, you throw it back in the ocean. You might not save them all, but you can save one. I'm sorry that you're not worthy of this nice little pin, sir, as a nice reminder. I'm going to pray for you, Secretary Kennedy. I hope we do better. I want you to do better. But today was a failure for you, man. I yield back.
Dude, I'm going to give you a little starfish pin. I can't. Sometimes, folks, these people make it difficult for me to carry forward with the show. He was going to give him his little starfish pin. He started undoing it from his lapel. I was going to give you this little pin. But you, Secretary, you have just failed us, so I'm not going to do that. Not today. This is the story of I think it's a girl, whatever. She goes and picks up every starfish and throws back in the ocean because they got washed up on shore. Somebody comes up to her and says, "Little girl, what are you doing? You can't possibly save them. Every little starfish that I pick up, I'm saving a starfish one by one." Wow, it's like Oscar Schindler at the end. I wish I could have saved more. This is so stupid. The Democrats literally, their brains live in a storybook land, kids' books, children's books. These people are stuck in maybe the 3rd grade. This is an important point, by the way, as we talk about some of the developments in crime. Why do I say that? Because there's been a couple, incidentally, and I'll point to this here, a couple of Democrats, high-profile Democrats, have had an awakening on the subject of crime. They've started to realize that maybe Trump's message of cleaning up these blue cities that are suffering under the weight of criminal oppression, that maybe Democrats ought to embrace this before they lose everything politically. But again, the Democrats continue to see things in a very simple, binary way. And it isn't just that, we hate Trump. Trump is terrible. Ergo, we're going to do whatever the opposite of Trump is, even if it means helping gangbangers kill people. It's that some of them, I guess, apparently really do believe that redemption and rehabilitation, restorative justice, and all these things, that works. And it is one of many examples, right, of where you've got this, suicidal empathy for very dangerous people. By the way, maybe Republicans suffer a little bit of this with some of our own. I'll explain what I mean by that with the Epstein development. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Shocking news in Europe overnight. Crazy story. The Italian police, just outside of Rome, thwarted a terror attack in the small town of Viterbo. Now, I know Viterbo very well because my sister lived there for a year, and I visited it, and we have friends there. So this is just hits quite close to home. The story is that two Turkish men armed with machine guns were planning to open fire on a crowd of 40,000 Christians who were gathered to celebrate the feast day of St. Rose. Sam Mirejovsky here. The What's Right show is on, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Now, I bring this up because this is suicidal empathy in action. I love this term. This is something that has been brought to prominence by Gad Saad. I cite him frequently. Saad is a professor out of Canada, a critic of Canada. He is one of us. Saad is Jewish of Lebanese descent, super bright guy, and has written a number of books. Parasitic Mind is one of them. And then he wrote a book about the suicidal empathy thing, which is really what happens when we as individuals or as a society collectively put blinders on, right? We put blinders on, and we have empathy towards someone that ultimately does us harm. Now, it's happening, of course, throughout the world, primarily in the West, in Europe, and a tolerance for Islamist radicals. They're importing them en masse. And we started doing it here, too, in the U.S. It's a dangerous thing to have happen. You go to places in this country, they're no longer recognizable. Places that were once fully American, European immigrant stock, hundreds of years back, suddenly look like little Somalia. And you've got a congressman or woman running around with a little thing on her head, marrying her brother. It's weird. But I digress. So, they've got an immigration problem in Europe, and they're letting people in who are dangerous. And they're doing it under the guise of compassion. And I think for a lot of leftists that support this, they truly are compassionate. And it's dangerous. Now, I think this is also true in crime. So we're having this big discussion right now about crime in the country, and Trump's approach, by the way, is the right approach. Trump's approach is we're going to come down on criminals. Trump's approach is my approach, which is I think that criminals ought to be afraid of us again. That's really important. So Trump's approach is more police, more enforcement, more punishment. He recognizes, as a former New Yorker, that New York right now, as soon as they began going soft on criminals and releasing people for theft misdemeanors, its crime spiraled out of control. And most importantly, you have a group of, actually for the size of New York, a relatively small group of a couple thousand people, of repeat offenders that are responsible for a substantial portion of the crime. You simply arrested those people, locked them up, put them in jail, threw away the key, presto, voila, by a significant margin, your criminal activities would go down in that city. But this is something the left won't admit because the people at the top cynically want mayhem and want a destruction of society, want businesses to be blighted for, streets to be blighted, and ultimately those businesses to be shut down, ultimately for there to be state-run stores or large companies like Amazon. Of course, corporate companies, large companies tend to give money to the Democrats, support the Democrats. Big companies, this is something you don't learn in Republican School 101. Big companies love regulation. If I'm Amazon, okay, if I've made it, I'm not picking just on Amazon, but if I've made it, if I got some big company, I won't say Amazon. If I've got a big company that does something, and I don't know, I have 55% of the marketplace, which is really good. I want a lot of regulation to prevent upstart challengers from coming up and rising up and dethroning me. Actually, the counter, we Republicans, growing up, right, we're told business is good, just laissez-faire, and all this, great. But we actually didn't realize that these big companies that we were supporting and we were standing up for and having lots of arguments with our friends and me in school, well, don't be mean to that big company. What that big company ever do to us? And having the liberal teachers say, well, their companies are evil. They're not all evil. Of course not. But the dirty little secret is that these big businesses oftentimes love regulation because it freezes out competition. All right. Now, competition is good for you and I. We're consumers. We're out there in society. We want competition. We want upstart competitors to constantly challenge market leaders in any industry in order for us to get the best possible good at the best possible price. This is how it all works. So, but I'm just saying this is so. When it comes to crime, the Democrats, I think, are protective. Again, these big companies know that if the little businesses, the street front businesses, if they are suffering, the big guys are gonna do great, right? This is how it works. So that's one of my theories. But regardless, rank and file libs and go, oh, well, we got to be compassionate. We got to be nice to go. You know what? Joe Criminal over there, he had a tough upbringing, Sam. You don't understand that, you white guy. You're a rich white guy. What do you know about Joe Criminal? He had it tough. My response to that always, you don't know how I grew up. You don't listen to my show. You don't know anything about me. It wasn't easy, but I'm not going to get into that here. You don't know how Joe Criminal had it tough, Sam, and that's why we as a society have to help him. Abdulaba, whatever his name is, that was intending on killing 40,000 people in Viterbo, Italy, he had it tough too, Sam. You got to understand these people. As they're starting over. I mean, they're raping kids. It doesn't, it's, you got to understand. My perspective is I don't really care about somebody's motives or the reason why. We have laws, we have norms. You break them, you're done. I mean, that's kind of that's common sense. I'm not looking at the individual. In fact, last time I checked, Lady Liberty is blindfolded. She can't tell what age you are, what race you are, what gender you are or aren't or want to be. None of that. So I'm setting the stage here because it actually, some of it afflicts us as Republicans as well when it comes to some of our heroes. I'm looking at this thing with Massey. I got into it a little bit yesterday. Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene are devolving into complete clowns. And I know many of you, my producer Robbie included, looks up to Thomas Massey. But I'm watching him do things. I cannot be quiet about it anymore. This Epstein thing, it's not even about Epstein anymore. I'm not even going to go through my whole thoughts on Epstein. It's not relevant. What's relevant is this. Massey's doing the same thing the Democrats do. He's turning into a Democrat. Might as well. And we, as Republicans, being empathetic to him, this is suicidal empathy in its own way. So let's talk about that. We got to get to the crime thing. By the way, there are some common sense Democrats out there who are beginning to hedge against the insanity. And the breaking development, of course, is that Trump is deploying a bunch of assets into Chicago. So let's talk about that too. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here. Yes, I know. I just saw this. Robbie, I saw this post here. Gunther Eagleman, this conservative influencer online, wrote a suspiciously pro-India post and then deleted it. Can I tell you what's actually going on in social media, in conservative social media? There are a lot of people who don't even live in the country who pretend, give themselves a fake name. They have a little avatar or a photo of somebody, and they do a great job together with AI and a little bit of intelligence, putting together conservative content, and they make money. Some of them operate multiple accounts, and they get huge followings. They're not real. So one of the best things about me is I'm a real person. I exist. Much to the disappointment of many. At What's Right Sam is where you can find me on X. Account is not operated by a Pakistani bot farm. That much I can guarantee you. By the way, Robbie, did I say Lady Liberty earlier last segment? I meant Lady Justice. I got my ladies mixed up. What can I tell you? I've had worse things happen, to be perfectly frank, folks. Okay. So if we're going to talk about the suicidal empathy that we have inside the party, let me dispense with this right now. All right. I mentioned this yesterday. Do we understand that Massey, I don't know, I try to look this up, Robbie. How many times has Massey talked about Epstein when Biden was president? Did he hold a press conference with the victims? Why is this coming up now? Why is he doing it now? Why now? Oh, I don't know. Maybe he's decided to pick a battle with Trump. He sees this as a vulnerability of Trump's. I know Trump's coming after him because this guy's, Trump's got an agenda to move forward. He expects Republicans to get in line, and they're not. Democrats always fall in line. They always look out for their own, where Republicans don't. Now, everybody's like, but he's principled. Okay. There was a clip. I'm going to play it here. He is talking about the client list. He's actually referring to a black book. All right. Pay careful attention to what he says. This was just today, a few hours ago, on a national show. This is Massey talking about, we're gonna read the names. We're compiling a list, and let me give you an example. Let me give you a name. He happens to give a name of a prominent supporter of Donald Trump, a prominent supporter of Donald Trump's, who is also spending money to fight Massey in his district.
Well, let me give you the name of one of the billionaires who's running $2 million of ads in my district since I started this effort. His name is John Paulson. He's a hedge fund manager and a major donor to the Republican Party, a major donor to the Speaker of the House, a major donor to the president's campaign, and he's in Epstein's black book. Now, that's public, but that's indicative of the types of people who may be implicated or just embarrassed by a complete release of these files.
That's what? He's talking about Epstein's address book. Folks, if I was a socially prominent, financially connected man about town in New York in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, before any of this nasty stuff blew open about Epstein, there's a good chance my name would be in that book. Not because I'm dinkling around with Epstein and doing anything illegal or even untoward, but because he's a connected guy. He goes to parties. I've been talking about this with Trump forever, right? That, of course, Trump, who was a prominent fixture on the New York social scene, on the Manhattan social scene. If you know New York, Trump Tower is just right by the park. Park Avenue, right? Yeah, well, between, yes, on the east side of the park. And it's, but Epstein lived, 10 blocks away? Up against the park by the Frick collection, by that mansion. I mean, they were neighbors practically, okay, in the grand scheme of things. They ran into each other everywhere. They had each other's phone numbers. I have no doubt about it, right? I'm talking about Trump here. Massey coming out and saying that Paulson's name appears in the book, and that this is just indicative. I'm just indicative of the kinds of people that might be embarrassed. This is so unbecoming of him. And I'm saying this to those of you, Robbie, who are fans of his. I'm telling you, you're getting taken. This guy's a complete fraud. This is shameful. Actually, Massey's going to get himself sued if he keeps this up. He frames it very carefully. So this is just the address. It's just publicly available. But these are the kind of people that are fighting the release here. We have to be beware as Republicans. And look, I will admit, right? I always say I'm always right, rarely wrong. I will admit when I'm wrong. I've, a few months ago defended Massey and understood he was coming. Look, I think he's coming from a principled position where he needs to fall in line with Trump, but let's not point our guns at each other. I think that's the gist of what I said. I reserve the right to always change my opinion with new information. So I don't want to, you send me the email, but I'm not going to be persuaded by, well, Sam, you said, look, this is new information. I see this. And I'm going, well, what? And if Massey's only holding large, vocal protests about Epstein now that Trump is, and I'm just, look, the whole thing stinks to me. Now, dittos for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I wouldn't, look, if I was a Republican, I would right now, I would not be making my bed with any of these lawyers here who are representing the victims. These people are known Democratic operatives. And I know, listen, a lot of people are saying, well, Gloria Allred was at the press conference. Gloria Allred was not at the press conference. So we do have to keep our facts straight. But she's in this thing. She's one of the lead counsels. And who is she? Well, Lisa Bloom, her daughter, they both are known Democratic operatives. Just seeing some posts by Juanita Broderick, who's, of course, accused Bill Clinton of rape, I think quite credibly, and recounted a story how she went to Gloria Allred back in the day for representation for the case. Allred said she had a conflict. Allred doesn't go and represent anyone, any victim who cannot be politically used. This is a known thing, and I'm saying this as a fellow California barred trial lawyer, and and I've met her, I know her, I've seen this, right? I know how this works. Telling you this is her MO, and so it's very dangerous. And so even if I'm ascribing, which after this clip here of Massey is hard to do, but some good intentions, just fundamentally disappointed by these people and their idiocy. I don't quite know what the trap is, but I smell one, right? I got the little hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Well, anyway, by the way, speaking of suicidal empathy and crime, there's a guy in Canada, chief of police out there in Canada, who's telling you if you get a home intruder in your home to just comply. This clip's making the rounds. Let me explain what this means and tell you what America says in response. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Making radio great again. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, friends. Good to be with you per usual. So, press conference in Canada. York, Ontario Police Chief Jim McSween has become internationally famous, not in a good way. I don't know if it's internationally famous. Certainly has spread like wildfire across the United States as we continue to guffaw over how dumb Canada is. Now, I have a very specific criticism here of this. By the way, here's the clip. So we first lay down the actual source of the statement. He's holding a press conference to tell people what to do in case of a home invasion robbery. Now, I just want you to think for a minute what you would do in the event of a home invasion robbery. Okay, I just want to just think about it. Okay, put it that visual in your head, and then tell me if that comports with what this Canadian police chief is telling the citizens of his town to do.
In the unlikely event that you find yourself the victim of a home invasion, we are urging citizens not to take matters into their own hands. While we don't want homeowners to feel powerless, we urge you to call 911 and do everything you can to keep yourself and loved ones safe until police arrive and be the best witness possible. This could mean locking yourself in a room away from the perpetrators, hiding, fleeing the home, but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. But as it stands, we know the best defense for most people is to comply.
Comply. Just if you get invaded, just do what you're told. Everything's going to be fine. What? Now, I blasted this out on X yesterday, on Twitter, at What's Right Sam, by the way, is where you can find me. And I said the easy explanation for this defeatist thinking is that we really are a tale of two countries, Canada and the United States. Here in America, we broke off from England. We fought England. We won. We stuck it to them. We, the puny colonists, kicked out our oppressors, our overlords. We tossed the king aside. And, there's certain frontier spirit then that spread through the country and the rebel in us. The idea that we would just comply with the home intruder is an anathema to the American fighting spirit. It doesn't exist. There's this Polk County sheriff. I think his name is Judd. And he, that's right, Sheriff Grady Judd, Polk County, Florida. This guy's become an internet sensation because he's pretty funny. He reminds me a lot of John Kennedy, Senator Kennedy down in Louisiana. Just very funny, kind of dry humor. And during one of the hurricanes, he gave a press conference, and he told everyone watching there in his county, Polk County, Florida, exactly what they ought to do if they came across any looters in their homes. Tell me if this sounds a little bit different than York, Ontario in Canada.
People have a right to be safe in their homes. They have a right for their property to be safe, even when part of their home may be torn away. And these looters, that's unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese. because you know what? That's one looter that won't break into anyone else's home and take advantage of them when they're the most vulnerable.
Shoot him. Tournament. I think in one of these press conferences, he says, we started blasting the guy who looked at more holes than a slice of Swiss cheese. I'm going to tell you. I'm just letting you know. You come into my house, you get lost. Maybe you're lost. Maybe you look like someone who isn't supposed to be in my home. But in either event, you're in my house, you're not invited. You're not going to leave there in one piece. I promise you that. I will unload in you everything I've got and not stop until I run out of bullets. And I'll worry about the cleanup later. By the way, where I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, the police will come and give me a high five. I know some of you live in jurisdictions where, let's say, that's a little bit more of a dicey proposition. I'm looking at you, Los Angeles. Oh, in California, you're screwed. I mean, you shoot a home intruder in California. That's it. The libs, they just want you to comply. Now, this is the thinking on crime, right? This is the thing that we're just going to be nice to the criminals. We're going to be nice to the we're just going to accommodate them. This is the same thinking that has ruined now 2 successive generations of kids. The soft parenting is what I'm talking about. You see the moms, you got the kid throwing a tantrum, and the kid is, old enough to not do that. How many times have you seen this? Airport, a hotel, on the street, at a restaurant, movie theater, and the kid's doing the thing, which is immediately recognizable to any one of us that have been parents, right? That have raised kids. They're doing the thing, and they're making a scene, and the mom is like, I need you to listen to what I'm saying. Johnny, I need you to listen to what honey, I understand you're upset, but let's talk this through. I'm looking at it, I'm like, lady, you got to smack the kid. Like, the kid needs a swat across the money. This is a millennia more of evolutionary biology. Kid needs a whack, and you need to assert yourself. Otherwise, this child is going to go forward and devolve into something that is not compatible with polite society. Most of the criminals, by the way, out on the street are kids that were spared the rod, if I may say that, both literally and figuratively. I feel very, very strongly about this. I don't know. I should probably sometime have my kids on the show. I should ask what their experiences were, because we were tough with all of them. But consequently, I can tell you, I have kids that I can take to any restaurant now that I have now an adult and to, in a preteen and a teen, but I can take them anywhere. I could take them anywhere 10 years ago. I could take Daniel as an 8-year-old to a fancy restaurant, and we could sit down and have a nice, polite conversation. He didn't pull anything because, he knew better. He was taught better. These are the fundamental principles. And actually, this is an abdication of Western civilization. This is how I see it. Whether it's parenting, whether it's on the topic of immigration, we'll just let all these trash people into our country because we're gonna love them up, and we're just gonna do everything's gonna be fine. Narrator, it was not fine. Or with criminals, we're just gonna let them be. No, you know what? It's restorative justice, Sam. You don't understand. Bobby over there was at a troubled. He's a troubled Ute. He's struggling with things. This is just what's so massively frustrating. By the way, did you see this Patrick Bet-David? Did you see this? This is a great set. I got to get to this. Patrick Bet-David, self-made guy, immigrant from Iran. He's got a show. He sat down with a bunch of avowed socialists, and he starts debating them. I had a little bit of a different takeaway than just the general, oh, haha, they all think socialism sucks. There's a particular moment that caught my ear, and I think it ties into this topic nicely. Be right back. I'll take a quick break now, and we'll get to it here on the other side. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. So I'm here. I'm doing the show. But also, I want you folks to know how talented I am, immensely talented. As I'm doing the show, I'm also working for a client right now, getting him some money that he needs in the background with my team. I'm just multitasking. Very proud of myself today. And yeah, so anyway, here we go. The What's Right show is on, powered by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash. 702-820-1234, offices in Nevada and California. Not a left-wing wackadoodle law firm, okay? Don't hire one of those liberal nut jobs where your settlement money is going to end up getting used as campaign contributions for left-wing causes. I'm being honest. I'm telling you, that's how that goes down. Sam & Ash, because you deserve what's right. Patrick Bet-David, American entrepreneur, great American success story, immigrant success story. Love this guy. Don't know him personally, but saw that he had a little sit down with some commies the other day. And he filmed it. Now, okay, there were some funny bits about the commie stuff. For example, the girl who was defending communism really doesn't even know what a communist country is. Now, let me play this one real fast. It's just a little flavor, a little taste of what was going on.
I like to be free, but that's why I'm anti-capitalist.
Well, maybe you ought to move to North Korea or Cuba or
capitalism removes that choice. There is no real incentive of capitalism because the incentive is survival. When you get into communism, the incentive is for the common good.
I love that. I got an offer for you before we move on. If I were to give you your $2,350, which is the cost to renunciate your citizenship, and I paid you your first class, flight to whatever communist country, and $20,000 of spending money,
communist country.
Would you give up your citizenship to go to that country? Whichever communist country you want to go to.
Yeah,
Cuba, we can give you Venezuela, we give you North Korea, any one of those you want to go to.
Those aren't communist countries. North Korea is not a communist country. Where does she want to go? The United Kingdom? These people are hilarious. Now, okay. Here's the one that I want to focus on. There was the guy who had been to 400 interviews, complained he couldn't get a job, and then when he was being offered a job by Patrick Bet-David, he was asking all these questions, being super obnoxious, and sounded almost like he was turning the job down, and it was just obvious why he hadn't been able to score employment. But this is the one that really got me. And remember again what I'm telling you, the root problem with the way liberals treat crime and how they treat child rearing, and pretty much everything that they have in their worldview is that you can't help yourself. You cannot help yourself. You're a victim. You can't do it. And this is the single most destructive and poisonous thing in left-wing ideology that exists. And it destroys everything in its path. Listen to this guy.
I changed. So can you. Look at the way you're speaking to me.
You can change, you can work hard, but
do you know somebody like you? Do you know somebody like you that speaks this eloquently? If somebody gets a hold of you in real estate, insurance, finance, you can learn how to sell, and you can make some real good money. Somebody like you that I'm watching.
Not everybody's born with those abilities. You have to be,
brother.
Somebody who's white, tall, 6'4", whatever. They're
I'm
much
Middle Eastern. I'm from Iran. Do you realize a lot of stuff that goes against me?
Okay, but many people have no choice to
but
physically
that's an
alter.
Excuse language.
Excuse language. It's also called learned helplessness. It's learned. This guy's going, and by the way, Patrick Bet-David is engaging with him in a very, very pleasant way. And he's complimenting him. He's, listen, you're well-spoken. You'd have the ability to sell. You'd have the ability to go on, on a sales. If you was a little training, you could be a killer out there. And this guy who, by the way, is not hideous looking. I normally would be one to quickly criticize the appearance of a liberal, but he's not bad looking. He goes, well, you have to be like 6'4" or whatever, white and tall, 6'4". But David goes, I'm Middle Eastern. I'm from Iran. That stuff goes against me. Oh yeah, but many people have no choice. No choice. Isn't it funny how the same people that shout about a woman's right to choose then want the government to do everything else for them? I'm surprised that the left can wipe their own asses. Like, it's a real thing. I'm surprised that they don't ask Elizabeth Warren to come into their loo and take a little, feather out. And I'm just, this is I'm bumping into the microphone. I'm so agitated. This is the problem with liberals. And so again, like if you go and you talk to a liberal about crime and you say, well, we got to be compassionate. These people can't help themselves. Yes, they can. Their lack of impulse control is something that society, starting in their formative years, and if they're not getting it at home, they ought to get it in school. They ought to get it in the third grade. I honestly, if it were up to me, teachers would be able to hit kids again. Like I'm to that point. And those of you, by the way, who are teachers dealing with out of control kids, yeah, admit it. You kind of think maybe Sam is not so crazy. Don't you? Got to be a kid or two in your class you'd want to whack hard. The Board of Education. Anyway, I'm getting to that point. But the thing is, they're not getting it at home. So and then you send them to school and they're not getting it there. And then they end up in their late 20s, early 30s, like this kid, man, going, I can't do anything. I'm just, I'm just helpless. And if I was taller, what if somebody told Danny DeVito, you have to look like Cary Grant to make it in Hollywood? You want Cary Grant to play the Penguin? There's something for everybody, right? I know this is starting to go down as one of my more controversial rants in a while. But I speak the truth here, folks, at great peril at times to my professional reputation. But there it is. This learned helplessness. And by the way, who profits from this learned? Because you always have to look at everything through the lens of who wins. And the very simple fact of the matter is that the left wins. The Democratic Party wins. If you are helpless, if you are led to believe that you can't achieve something, then now they have somebody who's on the take, somebody who needs the largesse of government. And that government then can be highly coercive. And it's funny because the liberals, by the way, have this figured out. It's always so hilarious to me because, like a Me Too. Remember Me Too? I think it's still going on. But if my boss, there was an unequal, he was older, he was richer, he was this, it always comes down to this, right? Robbie, you know what I'm going to say next? Unequal power dynamic. And these libs whine and cry about the unequal power dynamic. He was a rich older man and he screwed me. And they have no qualms about voting for a government that has more power by virtue of their own helplessness. You want to talk about an unequal power dynamic? I will gladly tell you about how my parents grew up in communist Czechoslovakia. Boy, that's a long story and a good story. You want to talk about where you have no say? This is just very, very straightforward stuff. And this is where the left is absolutely inconsistent intellectually. Unequal power dynamic when it comes to the rich white guy. It's taking care of me when it's an oppressive Soviet socialist government. I'm just pointing this stuff out, folks. All right, I'm be off for a few days. I'm traveling, headed to Europe. I will be live on the ground middle of next week, so we're going to do a few replays. Bear with me, folks. Sorry about this. And I will see you on the other side of it. And keep the faith, folks. We got this. We're making a comeback.